Good afternoon, everybody. This meeting is called to order at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please note the meeting is video and audio recorded and all electronic meetings are uploaded to the municipality's YouTube page. By registering to participate in the meeting by electronic means, you are consenting to have your likeness and comments recorded and posted on YouTube. I will now read the township's recognition statement. The township is currently developing a formal land acknowledgement statement. We recognize that when the first Euro-Canadian settlers arrived in what is now Quislinch Township, the Anishinaabe ancestors of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation had long established hunt camps in the area. Through written and verbal accounts, we understand that the Anishinaabe interacted with the settlers in a friendly and cooperative manner. It is acknowledged that the development of the township encroached upon their traditional way of life, resulting in their displacement. We'll now do a roll call of committee members in attendance, starting on my left. Christine?
Hi.
Present. Lily?
Present.
Andy?
Andy, yes.
Tamsin, present.
And Cheryl.
Present.
And I just like to welcome you, Cheryl. I think this is the first meeting that you've been at and I've been here in attendance. So certainly welcome to the Heritage Committee meeting. And I think we've, you know, in the first kind of year of this committee, we've had a lot of work done in terms of the designated the first round of heritage properties, and we're in the midst of our year or two of heritage. And you know, so lots of really exciting stuff going on for the township with respect to heritage. And you know, if there's any comments you'd like to share with your peers on this committee, the floor is yours.
Well, I'd just like to say that I'm a good fit for the committee. I have a lot of history in Quislinch Township, and as my great grandfather first settled here many years ago. I've already had the opportunity to work with a lot of people and attend workshops and get to know everybody. So I hope that it will be a good fit.
Wonderful.
Oh, and I wanted to say, I also think that it's helpful that I've been on the Historic Society for several years and can hopefully that will be of assistance, especially with this designation of properties.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Welcome and look forward to working with you. So we'll now move to our moment of reflection. Please pause for a moment of reflection. Thank you. We'll now move to the confirmation of the agenda. Does anybody have any amendments to the agenda that had been previously circulated? Did we have any from staff at all?
No. That the Heritage Advisory Committee approves the May 6, 2024 agenda as circulated.
We have a mover, Tamsin, seconder,
I'll second.
Christine. All in support? Any dissenters? No. Carried. Just moving through our agenda, do we have any disclosure of conflicts of interest for any member of the committee based on today's agenda?
I feel like this is just what I do now. And I will disclose, yeah, I have a conflict of interest when it comes to the property 7094 concession 1.
And we've got that
Give it back.
documented.
I will write one.
No. Yeah, just fill it out and then say title, signature, etc. Etc.
What we're gonna do, we're gonna just do a template for you, Christine,
Yeah, right.
every meeting. It's all good, and
It's
you
a
know,
different property this time.
yeah, it's you know, and I think it's important that, you know, you have
It is.
a day job obligations that, need to be acknowledged.
Mhm,
And I think it's good. Anything else? Anybody, well, Christine's working through that one. Any other, conflicts? Okay. There we go. I do not believe we have any delegations. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we'll move through that one. So now we're into the consent agenda. So agenda item 7.1 was the March 4th, 2024 Heritage Advisory Committee minutes. Maybe stop there. Are there any comments or edits that anybody or call outs that anybody would like to have for those meeting minutes at all? Okay. We'll move to item 7.2, which is the Community Heritage Ontario, the Winter 2024 newsletter. Any comments or call outs from that piece of communication to the committee? The only one I would have just for staff is I do appreciate you including those because I think there's lots of really good information in there. The up and the downside is we always kind of get caught in the calendar cycle of getting winter newsletters in May type of thing, but I think sometimes that's just the cycle of the committee meeting schedule. But I appreciate you putting them in there because I think there is lots of really good information to be shared. My only maybe ask would be from staff when you guys receive those, if there is anything that's time sensitive.
Would you
Shoot.
try to circulate it to the committee?
Yeah. Okay.
There was an article asking for all heritage committees to fill out a survey regarding an extension. And I think that's something that we should maybe consider looking at. I was gonna ask if we had. There's a Survey Monkey link. So I think as a committee, we should.
Perhaps we could extend that.
It's a word from our readers
On page eight.
on the second or the. Sorry, page 3.
8.
And I know this is something that we've been talking about. You guys had a conversation about it already at the last committee meeting regarding that, so, but there is like a survey, actionable items in this article that we should consider.
Yeah, well, this is good. This is really good. Justine, I don't want to put you in the spot. I recall it was either the last council meeting or the council meeting before. We had some correspondence from some other municipalities in regards to Bill 23 asking for the heritage extension beyond end of this calendar year. My recollection, and correct me if I'm misremembering, was that council provided direction for township staff to support that request for extension. Did I catch that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, council at its meeting, I believe it was the April 10th meeting, received a consent item and supported that consent item, and directed staff to provide a letter of support. And that was relating to extending the deadline for designations from January 1st, 2025 to, I believe, January 1st, 2030. So
Perhaps
that
this, sorry, Justine, perhaps we can CC the ACO regarding that, because that's who's asking for this call to action. So if we include them in our conversation, just kind of let them know that we have followed.
Through you, Mr. Chair, with respect to the survey that is within the newsletter, committee members are welcome to fill out that survey. And staff can also looking at completing that survey as well, if we receive direction from the committee, but committee members are certainly welcome to provide those kinds of feedback.
Okay, so I don't see a deadline in terms of filling out the survey unless I missed it.
Let's try to see when we were taking the points card.
Yeah.
I think that's already.
February.
Okay. My take on it from a political standpoint is, I haven't seen any action, and even like my day job where we just kind of monitor all the bills and action, and this is one that just tweaks on me. So my take would be is after today's meeting, we can, maybe as staff can pull out that SurveyMonkey link, just because it's in a PDF, and I'm guessing it's not hyperlinked here. Thinking. No, it's not. Can we just shoot that out to the Heritage Committee with the request for each of the committee members to participate in the survey? And if we can at all, can we get the correspondence that the townships provided in regards to Bill 23 to, I'm guessing it would be AMO or some version of that, wherever that went to, I'm guessing it would have been the Minister of Municipal Affairs, I'm thinking. If we can just get a copy of that and share that with the committee, that would be helpful.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that will be on your September council meeting agenda, will be a copy of that resolution.
Okay. Okay. Good. Thank you for pulling that out. I think that's a worthy conversation to have. Anything else in the meeting minutes or the newsletter that anybody wanted to discuss before we look to accept them?
That the consent agenda items 7.1 and 7.2 for the May 6, 2024 Heritage Advisory Committee meeting be received for information.
All of that.
Good.
On support? Okay, any dissenters? None? Carried. Great. Now off to the committee reports. So the first one we have is item 8.1. HER 2024-011, the finance and budget training. And I believe we have Mary online. Where are you, Mary?
Thank you, Councilman Hurst. So this is just our typical annual report that we provide to each of our committees, just regarding the budget that was approved by council for 2024 and the process that's involved for any 2025 budget requests. So the report was provided to the committee, as well as some attachments included in the report. So there was the 2024 approved operating budget included as a schedule to the report. There was also a schedule to the report for any committee goals and objectives that you may have and any budget implications associated with them. And the process associated with requesting new items and that they be approved by the committee as a whole. There were some links within the report regarding the township's budget development and control policy, which includes information regarding our processes for both capital and operating budgets, as well as the user fees and charges processes that we have in place. I've also provided as a schedule to the report the compensation, benefits, and expense policy pertinent to committees and other appointments, and the community improvement plan, because there are some heritage items within that plan. So there's some links within the report for that for your information as well. So this is simply just an informative report for the committee and some guidelines for any 2025 budget request, should there be any from the committee as a whole. I'd be happy to answer any of the committee's questions.
Thank you, Mary. Any questions from committee members at all? Points of clarity? Anything for Mary? Okay, hearing none. I did have a couple more just high level questions, Mary, and it's maybe more just for points of clarity than anything. Can you share with us some timelines? So I think we're in the midst of 2024 now. We're kind of working through our 2024 work plan. 2025 calendar year for this committee will be somewhat different in terms of really trying to enact a lot of the communication and promoting the heritage attributes once we've kind of got through the heavy slog of designating properties. Can you share with us just some high level timelines in terms of the budget process or the planning process leading into calendar year 2025 that, so if, I guess what I'm getting at is when do we need to finalize heritage funding requests for calendar year 2025 through this committee so that they can get incorporated into the larger municipal budget planning process?
So I believe in the report, we provided the September 9th, 2024 committee meeting date, to finalize any 2025 budget requests. But as we all know, the process has actually started now. So if there are, specific items, that the committee does want to propose, now is the time to start planning for those items, with the goal of having them finalized and approved for the September 9th, 2024 committee meeting. But I'll let Laura or Justine speak further to this, just because I don't have all the committee meeting dates in front of me right now.
Laura?
Through Mr. Chair, that's correct. If anyone on the committee has a goals or like a budget proposal form, the goals and objective proposal form to fill out for any 2025 budget considerations, they really can do that at any point in time in hopes that at the September 9th meeting, it'll, like, the whole committee can talk about it, and then it would go to council after that meeting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, thank you for that. And I think really my purpose in asking that question is to get everybody thinking, you know, because we have a meeting today, and then, you know, typically the summer, you know, there aren't heritage committee meetings. So this is something that, you know, each of the subcommittees, and I know Tamsin, you and I were on the engagement subcommittee, and I certainly have a bunch of stuff that I feel we should be getting in the docket for 2025. So I think, you know, my request of the committee members would be is give this some thought over the next probably 6 to 8 weeks so that we can start working through what those budget requests are, and we can through our various subcommittees so that, you know, I don't want to have this conversation in September. I want to have a refined conversation.
Through you,
Just-
Mr. Chair, I would just add, it'd be really helpful for staff if we could have the, very least the first drafts of those proposals probably for early August, so that we can work with committee members over the month of August to have those in good shape for the September meeting.
Thank you. Maybe one ask would be, after this meeting, can you just send the committee some really rough budget timelines leading up to September that we can use kind of collectively just as a guideposts? So just to kind of build on Justine's comment, like, let's make sure that early August, we've got kind of what our funding thoughts are down, and then we can refine that. And it allows us to work backwards into it. Sorry, I went off on a bit of a tangent there, Mary. I think, you know, for our strategic planning aspects so that it syncs within the budget cycle, I wanted to make sure everybody was kind of on the same page in terms of what we want to achieve so that it's not coming in at the last second.
And I really do appreciate that, Councillor Hurst, because we all know that consolidating a budget takes a lot of time. So I do appreciate the committee working on that sooner rather than later. So that's great.
Awesome. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just one more thing to add, for the committee's consideration is just when, drafting these budget proposals. It's also very helpful if you look for outside funding such as grants, to support these requests, focusing there first before looking at a request that would increase the base budget for operating.
Incorrect, I don't have it right in front of me. Within that funding note that I think Mary had as an attachment, is there a line in there for external funding opportunities to explore or committed to?
Like, through Mr. Chair, do you mean in the proposal form
Yeah.
itself? Yes, there is
Okay,
a
perfect.
section.
It's good. Okay, any other questions for Mary or Justine or Laura here, just in terms of our finance and budgeting process? Okay. Hearing none, stay tuned. Lots of work to do on this one in the next couple of months, but I think, you know, I'll leave it at this. You know, certainly my mindset is we've done a lot of work in terms of the heritage designation process. I think it's on us to continue that, but also to showcase those and make people proud of the designation process and what this community has in terms of heritage properties and really showcase them. So stay tuned on that one. We ready for this?
That's staff report HER 2024-011 regarding finance and budget training be received for information.
We have a mover. Andy, seconder, Kimson. All in support? Dissenters carried. All right, here's the heavy one now. Report 8.2 HER 2024-012 Heritage Register Designation Update. Over to you, Laura.
Yeah, so through Mr. Chair, the purpose of this report is to provide the committee with the updated statements of cultural heritage value or interest. And then kind of looking at timelines, if the committee endorses these statements today, will then be given to the township's peer reviewer. And then a report will be brought to a future council meeting for council's consideration to state their intention to designate. They will come back to the committee.
So do we have any questions for Laura as part of this process? So all the subcommittees were set up, you know, you've done a bunch of site tours and on some of the properties. I'll maybe open it up if there are any comments, questions from anybody.
I think, with this process, it's important that we get to have site visits for the properties that we're designating in order to ensure that it's, written for their benefit as well as the properties. There's some properties that may or may not still have structures standing on their properties, or the structures have changed over time since the last time we saw them there. So I just want to put out that we need to somehow see these houses, because it's part of the bylaw, right, to get photos and or have an understanding, or at least the information out there for these property owners so that they know that there's a potential for exemption of some buildings on their property. So then they can then apply for that, or at least have that information out there. But I just feel like the site visits are a very important thing we need to focus on. And going into this, that's where I feel the least confidence around these bylaws for me. But the information that I've sourced out, I feel really confident in, so.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think we got more site visits this year than we did last year, so I think that's a good step in the right direction. Like we got twice as many, we saw twice as many properties as we did in this batch versus the 2023 batch. So I think we're headed in the right direction, but it ultimately is up to the property owner to want to have the site visit. Like we can't visit the site without them getting their consent. And we don't have any way of contacting them other than via mail. It's another tough piece, an added layer in that.
Is that because we're restricted?
Well, through Mr. Chair, we just don't really have a lot of people's individual, like property owners' emails on hand that we can then reach out to them.
Yeah, monitors?
There might be, I don't know if there's one of those in Keystone. I'm not, no. I feel like that's like personal information, maybe.
Elections have it.
No, we don't have it. Okay.
I want to just offer another word of support for that comment about how important they are. In the site visits that I participated in, I felt like it was a two-way street. It was not only so that we had a better understanding of the property, but it was helpful so that the homeowner had an opportunity, had real people to ask questions and to talk through some of the realities about what might or might not be included in the designation. So that to me was a relationship building opportunity and a really good one to engage in. So as much, like hopefully next year we can do even more. I mean, I think we're on the right trajectory so that we can do more of them. And however it is that we, I'd love to have more information than just addresses, but even if that's all we have to start the ball rolling, I think it's really worthwhile.
Justine.
Through you, Mr. Chair, with that being said, the engagement, process that we're going through, it's not done yet. So if council states their intention to designate these properties and property owners at that point, when they receive that notice, would like to have a site visit, there is still opportunities for us to connect with them and tweak those statements. as long as council hasn't passed that designation by law. So there is still further opportunity for engagement if that's desired or needed.
Okay, great.
I think that's really important. Let's maybe tease that out, 'cause I think it all syncs well with this. I guess, other questions from community members before I jump in? So maybe a question, Laura. So I think I would say, yeah, the number of site visits experienced this year versus last year is certainly bumped. So kudos to the staff for just coordinating that. It's not an easy thing. I'm wondering if, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, of the number of sites that we have in the docket for today, do you have a rough idea of like, did we visit 25% of them ish, just
Of the ones
collectively?
we're endorsing,
Yeah.
yes, if there's A through S, so that's, so we, yeah.
That's
Six,
kind of was my feeling.
6 by 18, that's like 33, just 35%.
So a third. Okay, that's a lot more than last year, so I think
Mhm.
that's good. Two thoughts would be, one, and I think that's important that Justine pulled out is, doesn't mean we can't visit the other 2/3 through the process. So maybe I would encourage, hopefully committee members are in support of this, is to continue following up with those sites that haven't had site visits to coordinate, realize, getting into the future, we will hopefully have a summer student with us, so maybe that's an opportunity for some time and to do some more photos and that type of thing. I won't get into how you schedule their days per se, but I think the other one is there any provisions, and I don't know this in terms of the process, Justine, but is there any provision when they first get that letter outlining the heritage process that they could provide township staff with a key contact phone number or email that would maybe help facilitate a site visit as opposed to just doing it like traditional mail? Is that an option for us? Without
Through you, Mr. Chair, so,
confidential stuff?
when we send the original forms, there was an opportunity for people to send back a form to us.
Yeah.
To send us an email, to reach out to us. When we send the notice of intention to designate, that is more of a formal notice. We certainly could look at including, additional information, as like separate from the notice. With that being said, that information's like, if we haven't received in previous, we may not receive additional information to keep on file. But, because we will be going through the regular mailing process for this as well. But we could certainly look at including an additional piece of information. Suggesting a site visit might be beneficial.
If it's not too cumbersome in the administrative process, I think that might be good value just to glean that type of information, knowing that that's a much easier way to communicate than kind of snail mail type of thing. I can say sample size of one, I have a pile of letters sitting in my desk that get opened occasionally sometimes, so, yeah. Is that something that we can kind of collectively work towards? Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair, like when we've received that information in the past for properties that we're actively working through, we do switch to communicating if they've provided that information, but if we don't have the information, unfortunately, we are stuck going through our regular mailing process.
One other thought, just to kind of hopefully tie up the site visits. So in the briefing notes that we get, I'm curious, Laura, in the future, if you can just add an asterisk or something to the end that a site visit was completed on a certain date.
In the report.
Yeah, by township staff or committee members or both. And I think that would be in just be like in May 2024 or something like that.
Through Mr. Chair, we for sure can include it, and we do have the list of the properties we site visited, I believe, in the chart of that report. But we can certainly like pull it out to make it look a bit better in the future.
Yeah.
Would it be helpful to the council staff, like when you guys are doing your meeting, to know that as well? Would it probably not go on bylaw, I'm thinking, but maybe some on the documentation that they provide?
Yeah.
You follow what I'm saying?
Okay. I think these are all just suggestions. Yeah, sure.
I was wondering if we could, on one of the forms, ask the specific questions that, we couldn't get answered because we weren't at the site visit. We're going off the forms that the Historical Society did in 2000 that maybe say original doors and windows. And when we had site visits, we found out that those weren't original doors and windows. And I wasn't quite sure how to do my statements, but on there, if I wasn't sure, I said, I'm not sure because there was no site visit. And I wondered if we were reaching out to the people, if we could say the problems that the committee found. Or because I know if I owned a property and I didn't no longer have an original door, I'd want it to be stated there that I didn't switch it after.
Completely. Yeah, I think those are all great observations. I think it's a two-way street too, right? It allows the vetting of some visual attributes in somewhat real time as we're preparing these. So, yeah.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Chair, are you thinking like in the notice of intention to designate that gets sent out to these properties, there would also be a letter then that asks the property owners to look at it and like for accuracy, et cetera, et cetera? Is this your idea?
Yeah, I think it's two ways, right? We have the Heritage Committee that kind of takes that work and refines it, but it also needs to be provided to the property owners to vet. You know, I'm just thinking if I was in their shoes and I have a property that's being designated and I read a report, who knows my property better than me? Hopefully, maybe somebody with the Historical Society because they have the historical documentation if you're a somewhat new owner, but I think that's a good vetting process. Like I see great value in that, and then but in addition to that, I see great value in doing site visits, even if it's a half an hour. You can glean so much visual information from a site if that property owner is willing to have somebody be on premises. You're not going in their houses, you're not going in their outbuildings, you're just basically walking around the premises, visually observing. And I think it's been a lot of really good work. I think all I'm hearing is, you know, more of the same, ratchet it up. Is that fair for everybody? Any site visit that I've been on has been a very beneficial experience for me. I'm sure I'm speaking for everybody here. But I realize that it's a lot of coordinating to do. Okay.
I just,
Keep dropping.
well, if we're ready for the resolutions to kind of endorse statements, I've just broken them out. And there'll be two resolutions, the one that you can't vote in, and then the one. So one will be of all the statements except for 7094 concession, and then there's a second resolution just for 7094 concession. Just for information purposes.
And I do want to note that it is sometimes referred to as 7094 and sometimes 7098.
Yes.
We have, through Mr. Chair, we did it. We've talked to the county, because on our mapping and our stuff, on our file that said 7098, and we've asked it to all be changed to 7094. Because that's what, so it is getting all changed to 7094. Whenever you see 7098,
Oh,
we want to change it to 7094.
are we telling the property owners about that? Because the property owners were told not to use 7094 ever, so,
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. So is it supposed to be the other way?
7098 is my understanding, and the seven.
Maybe I misspoke and that's what I meant to
Okay,
say.
they're going the other way?
Because
Okay.
I believe we had it on file one way and then we were gonna change it to the other way. So maybe I just have it in my head backwards, the numbers.
That, because there are two old addresses, the original farms, and so 7094 is one of the original farms, but no longer recognized as separate, and then there's, I think, 7201 is also incorporated there.
Mhm.
Just as, I just wanted to note it.
Sorry,
because
I did misspeak. It's 7098, not
Okay.
7094. I just
Okay.
checked.
There's at least one spot.
Too many
in here.
numbers in my head at all times.
There's at least one spot where it's referred to as 7094. I just want to be clear about myself that those are the same property, and
Mhm.
that's what I'm referring to.
Mhm.
Okay. That's all.
One very brief request before we move to that is, can you just at a very high level reiterate to the committee the designation process and where this decision fits in the
Yeah,
larger
please.
journey to designation, just so everybody is well aware of kind of the milestone that we're at
Mhm.
today.
So through Mr. Chair, if these statements are endorsed today, they'll then get sent to the township's peer reviewer and she'll look at the statements again, kind of editing. At that point in time, they'll go to council and then council may state their notice of intention to designate. Then there's letters that get sent out to all those property owners and they have 60 days. No, I was so close to getting it started. They have a certain amount of time that they can object or not object. They have how many days? 30 days. Yes, they do. I knew that too. They have 30 days where they can object or not object. And then depending on what we receive, well, then those statements or those designation bylaws will then go back to council for them to pass the formal designation
And then objection.
and any objections at that point in time as well.
And then roughly calendar speaking, to go to council in the next month.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we may actually be looking at pushing it out just due to some budget limitations with respect to when we get to the end process of registering the designation bylaw. So it may not be till towards the end of this year. In terms of the timelines imposed through legislation, we just have to state our intention to designate by January 1st, 2025. So that is kind of the most important date. So as long as we say our intention to designate anytime before that date, we are good.
So once we declare our intent to designate, how long do we have to actually designate?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe it's about 6 months. If an objection isn't received, once an objection is received, council does have to make a decision about the objection within a legislated time period. But from the date that you issue the notice of intention to designate, if no objection is received, it's a period of, I believe, 100 or about 6 months.
Okay,
I would have to check the legislation, but,
Something like.
so it's 120 days.
oh, 120. sorry,
120 days. They have 90 days. Council has 90 days to decide if they are going to designate or not, if there's objections. But it's 120 days. The whole process should be 150 days from start to finish. Based
So
on
they're-
the act.
And through you, Mr. Chair, we're looking at probably bringing those reports a bit later this year, just so that we have time to go through the budget process to make sure we have enough money to register the bylaws on title.
Okay. Regardless, end of year, we'll see lots of movement on this one, right? Okay.
I just have a question in terms of timeline then. You know, we've had that all laid out. If there are photos missing from this, or if there are typos or any of that kind of thing, there's still time for those to be, like, if there were site visits requested, all of that can still happen. So this is a draft and it continues to be a working draft for some time.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, we can update the statements up until the designation bylaw has been passed. So there's still time for little tweaks and edits to be had for sure.
Yeah, I think really what I was getting at, this is a step in a larger process that's gonna take us towards the end of the calendar year. Just so everybody is kind of fully aware, there's lots of opportunity for council to review these, there's opportunity for homeowners to review these, we've got some outside assistance, so on and so forth. So there's a stepwise process that Laura and Justine articulated. Timelines, well, sometimes the summer is a bit of a dead zone too, so we need to be cognizant of that. Okay, I think that's really what I was after, is just so everybody on the committee understood that this is a key milestone, somewhat early milestone in the process, but important nonetheless. Any other questions before we put it back to Laura for a resolution? All right, Laura.
Okay, so the first one will be all of the properties except for 7098. So that report HER just 2024-012 regarding 2024 Heritage Register designation updates be received for information, and that the priority property listing and supporting materials attached to this report as Schedule A through R for designation be endorsed by the Heritage Advisory Committee and referred to council for consideration for intention to designate.
Can we have a mover?
Oh, that.
And the seconder, Tam's in this.
Sure, I'll second.
All right,
And then we also have that report HER 2024-012 regarding 2024 Heritage Register designation updates be received for information, and that the priority property listing and supporting materials attached to this report as Schedule S for designation be endorsed by the Heritage Advisory Committee and be referred to council for consideration for intention to designate.
All right, number 2, Lily, and a seconder, Andy, and that was the one, we were abstaining, right? Number 2, abstain. Any dissenters? All right, carried. All right, exciting time for the community. We got these through the first hurdle. So, thank you, Laura and staff. That's a lot of work that goes into these. A lot of work. Okay,
Okay.
we're into
Yeah.
8.3.
So through you, Mr. Chair, the purpose of this report is to look at the committee's goals and objectives over the term. It kind of goes through each goal and objective individually, and then I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have about each one.
So do we have any questions on the report? Or I'm just skimming through my notes. Had it and then I lost it. I very much view this as a working document for everybody. Each year we add goals and objectives. And I think, I think it's a high level review of kind of the work that we're doing. I kind of view this as very much a 4-year run for this committee, and I think we've made a lot of really good process as I said at the onset. I think as we wrap up 24 and get into 25, our focus will start transitioning more to community engagement and promoting the heritage properties as opposed to the heavy research piece that's taken into consideration the first kind of 2 years of this. But I think, as we evolve goals and objectives, we'll make sure that these are incorporated and discussed with staff so that they can kind of put it in a manner that's documentable and trackable. So any questions before we put it back to Laura for a motion? Right, Laura?
That report, HERS 2024-013, entitled 2022 to 2026 Goals and Objectives, be received for information.
We have a mover. All right, Tamsin, and we'll take a second, or Cheryl, I'll get you in the meeting minutes here. All right, thank you, Laura. Okay, 8.4, report HER 2024-014, 2025 priority properties. So over to you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the purpose of this report is to provide the committee with an update on the goal and objective that was recently approved at the April 10th council meeting. Staff are kind of looking at next step for these priority properties. So kind of a little bit more background. There's the remaining 72 properties that are currently on our heritage register that have been identified as priority properties. All of these properties will be taken off as of Jan 1 and will lose their interim protection from demolition and prescribed events, but that doesn't mean we can't move forward with the designation of them. So staff are kind of advising that subcommittees be formed to look at all of the remaining properties, look at the information we have on file, and then kind of rank those properties to determine which ones should be chosen as the 2025 priority properties to designate. And I guess the last thing is staff in the attachment did kind of put preliminary rankings of all the properties, but that's not concrete in any way. We just kind of wanted to provide some first direction if that would be helpful for the committee.
Thank you, Laura. I guess I'll open it up to the committee for questions. I can share before we jump into that at a previous council meeting, we did have a somewhat lengthy conversation around what 2025 would look like, given, Justine alluded to the January 1, 2025 deadline. Doesn't mean we can't designate these properties. It just, there's some timelines we need to take into consideration moving forward. So the discussion was very much an appetite to prioritize after the first 2 cohorts that we're working through, the really important ones thereafter. So I'll maybe just stop there, but is there anything you add, Justine?
Through you, Mr. Chair, one thing that would be beneficial for staff to know out of this process is approximately how many properties the committee will be looking to designate in 2025, as there are budget implications with the peer review, and then again, bylaw registration, and a few other items that may come up. So having an idea of the number of properties that are being targeted will assist with budgeting purposes.
Got one of my questions, so that's good when that happens like that. I guess I'll open it up now for any questions of staff.
And then I would. Ask a follow-up about,
Yeah.
How many candidates?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think it's dependent on kind of the budget implications around it and the ability of the committee to work through the process. I would say it feels like 20 a year has been quite a bit, but it's been doable, so you may want to consider something similar.
Thanks, Justine. That's good guidance. Yeah, go
I
ahead. Laura.
wonder if we could break it out so that anything, kind of got it like 3 sections here, but my concern is that come January, I wonder if it's possible to have a notice of intent given for the next batch, maybe a smaller number, in order to protect those. Because I think there's a few maybe we'll identify that are higher risk as we go through this. I like this process, by the way. I think that was well thought out. But I think that there, come January 1st, there could be people lining up to winter houses going to be for sale that have potential. I don't want actually.
So you're thinking to get the notice of intention designated out by Jan 1?
Right, now I realize that we're talking about the ones from this year are going further, so I think it's been a big part of this is going to be budget constraints, and sadly, that means that, without, I'm thinking we need to put some importance onto this request from council when they look at this, because otherwise, not only are if it sounds like there isn't even enough budget to designate the ones that we're working on right now, what happens for the next batch that aren't even having a notice of intent ready for January 1st?
Hey, maybe Justine or Laura, can you just help me? I'm just thinking in terms of the timelines of syncing these. So like the notice to designate is kind of the first step in the process through this vetting. Just crystal balling this, if we were to do it by the timelines that Lily noted, that January 1-ish or prior to it, does that cause a great deal of administrative headache to keep with the syncing pattern, realizing that once you do that, you're basically on the clock type of thing, or is that not? And I realize that we're just asking like your hot take on this, so we won't hold it to you, but that's maybe my one thought would be is, because once you start that process, the clock's ticking, right? So does it put us in a corner per se that becomes unexecutable?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think where the timeline would probably be tight is in getting those statements together to be ready to do that at the beginning of January. Because the committee hasn't selected what those priority properties are going to be. So if you think about the amount of time that it takes to get these statements into a good spot when we know what the 20 are, to try and get, I guess, potentially 72 ready to go to be able to rapid fire them off, I'm not sure that's realistic. With that being said, so the committee does have the ranking available to them of like the level 3s. The committee can come back at their meeting in September and have a recommendation that they would like to begin work on those properties, and we could begin that process early with the understanding that it may be dependent on the budget process in 2025 of how many actually will be able to go through, but the committee can certainly jumpstart some of that work in advance if they want to more quickly pick which properties they're going to look at.
Or do you have something to add to that, Laura?
Sure, Mr. Chair, I just had information. I know part of the reason why the 2023 batch and 2024 batch were taken, yes, they're all important, but those properties were the properties that staff had the most information on file. So as we dwindle through the list, there's less and less information that we have on file, less wholesome statements prepared, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just also maybe something to think about too.
I don't think we need to do all 72. I think that was mentioned there for a second. I think maybe if we have some allowance, if when we go through this list and we come up with maybe a handful, like maybe 3 or 4 that we can put through the process a little bit faster, maybe that's more doable than say that next batch of 20.
Is there a way for us to make decisions, say, by next month? So that our heritage student could fast track some of this research for us, or maybe build these statements up over the summer instead of waiting till November to have our deadline? Is there a possibility that we could fast track ourselves? And that would be a question I'm asking all of our committee members. So that, and I don't know what the township's plan is for this heritage student, but I know that this is a potential exercise for them, so.
Sure.
Well, I know that I had Lynn Crow kind of identify with Mary the ones that they felt were important, and I give that list to Laura. And I think there's about 12 or 14 of us, but that might be a.
And they're all on the, sorry, through much sure, they're all in the register, so they're all there. I'm not exactly sure what they're all ranked right now, but if those were felt by the committee of ones that we wanted to focus on, they could be a part of the next batch.
Through me, Mr. Chair, I thought most of those properties were actually included in this round of designation that you had shown me.
The list that Lynn gave me were not the ones that we were working on right now, but Laura said they were on the next round.
So they would be the 2025.
That was my understanding.
Okay.
That's what, that was one of my.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So were those properties there in the report that we're looking at today?
I was
They in
looking
the
at
2024
I think
report?
I'm just looking at the email that of the properties that you'd sent me. They're in this this 2025 priority property report.
Okay,
2025.
can I make a suggestion?
Go ahead.
These community members have dedicated so much work. I think we should take that list, have a serious look at it over this next 4 weeks. And maybe make a, I don't know, decision on whether these 14 properties, based off of this 72 property list, make the most sense. Like, that's the starting point for sure for me. I will be looking at this list, hopefully Cheryl can forward it on to me when I'm making my decision in whatever subcommittee I end up in today.
Just following on what Tamsin's saying, I wonder if we could have just a little workshop with us instead of necessarily doing it broken down in such groups. Can we do something a little less formal and have more voices, but not too many, kind of discussing this? Because it sounds too important to just leave it till September, I think, is what I'm hearing as well as what I'm thinking.
Okay, so a
It's
couple
not
things,
September, it's
yeah,
November.
Oh, sorry, September's our next meeting, isn't it?
maybe 3 things that come to mind. I think maybe based on the prior 2 years, if we were to set an upward target of 20 properties for 2025, that's probably like our high water mark. And if we get less than that, then so be it. But I think let's set that as a rough target. I think the next piece is the properties that Cheryl and colleagues have identified, I think is probably our starting point. My recommendation would be if we're just kind of working through this, we'd have to be sensitive around our committee bylaws that we can't get together and just all do a meeting because there's procedural pieces, but maybe what we can do is request that staff divvy the properties up and assign them to subcommittees, if that's okay. This is up for conversation here, but I think we can get through that. And then those recommendations come back to our September committee meeting where we have that discussion and adopt the work plan that'll basically be the 2025. Like if I'm just kind of syncing this through, I think I'll stop there.
For this is a request or recommendation then. The list that has been provided in the sake of saving time and utilizing resources, maybe that could be what the summer student works off of based on what staff feel would be an appropriate decision around that. I would like to recommend that they focus on the properties that have been listed by our historical society as being priority.
Okay. I,
Just if that's an option for them in their workspace over the summer.
yeah, I'll maybe, I don't wanna
Is
get
that-
into developing work plans for students at this
Okay.
committee, but I think.
Is it a
what we-
recommendation we can make as a committee
Exactly.
is what I'm wondering.
That's,
I'm
that's.
so sorry for not going through the channels. It's a discussion.
No,
right now.
it's, I think, you know, and we want to have a free flowing conversation here. I'm sensitive that we're not, you know, directing staff as to what the job remit, that's on staff to do that, but we can make, as a committee, we can make a recommendation or a request that part of that student's work plan would be to examine this list and leave it to staff to best.
To make the decision. I like the
Best,
sound of that.
you know, plan the work per se. Is that a fair way of tackling that, Justine?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it may be most beneficial that, in terms of the use of the student's time, so if the committee is seeking to have these properties have their statements drafted, you could, I think, maybe just select those today and and break them up among the committee members potentially to work on. Because I would say the Heritage Summer student is not necessarily an expert or as experienced as our committee members are in this kind of process. The other thing that the summer student may be helpful with is kind of providing access to files or maybe helping to like find information for committee members as they're doing this work to determine what the next properties are. So I think there's a few ways that could go, but it is up to the committee. If the committee wants to just move forward with the properties that were recommended, you could certainly do that, but it might be worth taking the summer to have the time and not have the student kind of focus in on properties that you may or may not select at the end of the day.
Okay, and that's fair, and I guess maybe my recollection of last year's summer student, Nick, was like, he was really good, right? And realizing that when they're onboarding, you know, sometimes it takes a little while to get them up to speed. Okay, so let's bring this all back together here. So I think we definitely want to have a list for 2025 put together. I'd like to see an upward limit of 20. If we get less than that, that's okay based on resources and everything, but like as a target, my request would be that of those, I guess I'll call them level 3 for lack of a better way of saying that. And those level 3 targets overlaid with Cheryl's listing. So hopefully they're all the same, but if they're not on there, maybe my request would be if there is a gap, we add them to the level 3 based on her guidance through the historical society. Yes.
Just 6.
Okay,
Okay, yes. I was gonna say that email had 6, that makes sense.
perfect. That staff take that level 3 list, allocate it as best you see fit to the various established subcommittees that we've already got. The only criteria I would say is, and I won't hold you to this right now, Christine, if there are any conflicts that you have with that potential list,
I don't see any.
don't dump them on you.
I don't see any.
Okay.
So. I mean, I'm surprised there aren't. But there are.
As am I.
There's a ton of
I've
construction.
done it twice.
Okay.
And then the last piece is in regards to the heritage student that, 2 things there that we use that potential heritage student as a information resource. And then based on how they're onboarding and their various skill set. If we can get some more robust work out of them. The request has been made. Is that a fair way of cracking that? discussion. This is some heavy stuff to get through, but I think very important.
I have one question, I guess, again, for the actual committee here. Could we make a commitment to try to go through this initial ranking within a month? So that if we find something in there that isn't on the Historical Society's wanted list, that we could add it still for potentially having somebody to look at it? Or is that too aggressive?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the committee can't make decisions outside of an open meeting. So all of the properties that are going to be divvied up today, the 72 properties, are all on the register, so you will consider them through that process.
I think or maybe a different way of looking at that, Lily, maybe it'd be to up the ranking of what we call a level 3 right now. And just kind of walking this through, maybe it's a level 5 on the list, but based on review, it's like, did we miss something? Or is this a homeowner that's very committed to going through the designation process, and as a community, we want to support them? Maybe it does through that process for our September meeting. A recommendation can be made from a committee member that this particular property on ABC Avenue is elevated.
Through you, Mr. Chair, what staff can do is when we circulate kind of information to the subcommittees about the properties, we'll make sure that it's noted what level each property was initially ranked as. And if those were not ranked as a level 3, we'll just put like a little asterisk beside it and advise the committee that it was one that had been recommended to be looked at in more detail.
Fair approach.
That helps. I just have one more. This seems so time restricted that January 1st comes so fast. I'm wondering, can we have another meeting before the summer? Just to get this process going, because I do hear that they're seeing the same here in the Historical Society members, that there's some potential for some buildings coming down because of this, if it's not done quickly. So I'm wondering, can we prioritize it so that we get a meeting?
I have to ask staff for our procedural process. Is that
Through you, Mr. Chair, you can call a special meeting if required. Staff can work with the chair to find dates that would be available. Then we can work on setting up a special meeting.
would it be like reasonable to schedule, say, like a 2-hour meeting sometime midsummer at a time that fits for, and I realize that we're talking about a meeting in the summer type of thing, but is
Not all
that-
of us take the summer off.
Just saying.
Nor do I. I'm
I'll
the
be on
busiest I
vacation
am.
the first.
About end of June,
Yeah, that's when. So the end of June
before you go,
before the long weekend.
that's July, okay.
Yeah, here's maybe we'll approach it. We understand that there's a process that we can do to have a special meeting. Maybe Laura, if I can leave it to you, we can send an email out after, just flag some some potential dates, and we'll land on something as a tentative meeting date. Hopefully it fits in everybody's schedules. We'll do our best to accommodate that. My preference would be probably sooner in the summer versus later in the summer. Chair's discretion, but is that fair for everybody?
I wonder if we just clarify that we're not looking to have our designation descriptions complete. We're just looking to prioritize. It's not like we're looking to do even half the amount of work that we've done so far, right? We're just trying to.
So we're gonna decide on subcommittees today. We're gonna, as our individual subcommittees, go through this list as quickly as possible to try to identify priorities. And then come back to this meeting with our lists.
Can we do that?
Yeah. It's saying it's a level 3, we support it being a level 3, it's a level 4, it should be a level 3, or it's a level 3 that maybe it can go down type of thing. With the guidepost of, we probably want no more than 20 in level 3 to get the work done in 2025. Because if we have 60, it's like, it's not realistic for us to get all that information.
Is there a way that we can engage the community who have their houses on the registry and say, now's your chance to come forward if you want your house designated? Is there a way we can engage in community, which would also help make our decision on the lists potentially?
I guess maybe that's a better question for staff. Like, I think
Okay.
they've all been communicated with, but I'm not sure the request has been as blunt as you
Maybe
have
like-
articulated it.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, staff have, I believe it was last summer, we sent a notice out asking people to identify if they were interested in having their property designated. We can certainly send that letter again.
Is there
but we
an
have to do that
online
process
option
before.
for this type of idea, like a post to Facebook saying, hey, did you know this information is, and now's your chance to reach out to staff?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have done that as we've moved through this process. We've been very active on our socials, active on our Engage President platform, and through our written notices as well. But as I said, we can do another round.
I like the idea of coming back it with just, and maybe, I don't draft the letter for you, but I think it just the key date being that January 1, 2025 being like an important milestone and just a request to all those level 3, 4, 5s. If you are interested, the Heritage Committee is currently in the scaling process for 2025 priority rankings. If it's something you're interested in, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Please flag it. I think just to pull out that observation, I think. I don't see the harm in doing that personally. And hopefully we tease out a couple that are super keen. And if you have a willing homeowner, that's like half the battle right there. Okay. How are we doing capturing all that in terms of directional?
So through
feedback?
Mr. Chair, I kind of just put people in 3 subcommittees.
Okay.
And then right now, the resolution that's in the agenda kind of says to report back at the November Heritage meeting. I just kind of changed that to report back at a special meeting to be scheduled by staff for the end of June instead of November. And then at that meeting, we'll meet, talk about the ranking, and then hopefully get the process going and sooner versus later.
Okay, so existing subcommittees, the ones that we were reviewing, the 24, we'll keep those subcommittees as those 2 individuals just to kind of keep it consistent. Laura has taken those properties through your pure wisdom, or allocated them to the various subcommittees. And we'll take that over the next 6-ish weeks and find a date in late June that works for everybody to have a special committee meeting to go through the vetting process. Is that fair? Good conversation. This is never easy when it gets into the process of actually getting committee work done but yeah, and thanks to staff, that sometimes just the procedural process of how we approach this, we need to be consistent and on the right side of our procedural bylaws. So I appreciate just walking us through that. Are we ready for a motion based on what Laura articulated? For me?
Is it 2 here or is there more than 1?
Do we get to choose which subcommittee we get to be on right now?
I would like.
Can I make a recommendation?
Sure.
Okay.
Actually, I have a question. Cheryl, is your property on one of these?
But it's no longer our property, or no,
Oh,
no, my property is,
Because there's some on Victoria Street. I just-
yeah, no, no.
Okay.
Share your screen.
Mhm.
Just to go ahead.
Oh.
Yeah, so Laura's got the list. She just arbitrarily put them in three groupings.
Mhm.
There you go.
There's a property I was looking at, it's definitely be, I'm not sure if that helps, but I've already done some research on one of them.
Okay.
But To be fair, you said that there were some that didn't have as much information. That's not stuck in subcommittee Cs, is it? Like that wouldn't be fair to those people that they don't have any information.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the way this was broken down was just by
Right.
roll numbers. It was nothing to do with the
It-
levels.
It looks like map, and if I could put myself into subcommittee A, my neighbors may wanna, I'm close to my neighbors that way, so I can answer any questions they have.
Okay, so we can say that subcommittee A, Tamsin, and somebody. We know that subcommittee B, we want to have, Lily, this was the property you were working on?
Oh, sorry, just found it. I've been going over all of these things, and I just found one, yeah. So, subcommittee B, I can't be on.
Okay.
Subcommittee B.
Okay, let's put you on C.
I'm going,
That's
I'm,
good. That's better to
looking
do
for
it
that
now
one.
than,
Yeah.
after the fact.
that might be. I know, well, that's, they're not all the same addresses.
Yeah, sure.
I think we did that.
Is that?
Okay, so is there any interest for the other?
I'm fine with any of them from my perspective.
Mhm. Do you care if I just pick people on anything here?
Andy, is that okay
Yeah.
from your
Sorry,
standpoint?
I'm just going through, now I'm just thinking of,
I don't know, it's like, this is the rest of the version. No, I kept.
okay.
I believe that comes up to 79, right?
Cheryl,
I
do you
think
have
Cheryl-
a preference in any of the committees?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
if I hold a mortgage on a property, then,
You would be in conflict.
okay, so I would be in conflict on 5 Victoria. What's a lockout?
I think that was in C.
Committee B.
C,
Okay.
yeah.
Cheryl and I are not doing B.
Okay, just flip flop, sure.
Okay, so we'll have to break out these resolutions a few different ways.
Yeah.
So does that, oh, Cheryl. Okay, so we have subcommittee A as Tamsin and Andy, subcommittee B, Lily and Russell, subcommittee C, Christine and Cheryl. And then each,
Okay. Is it a church or is it a meeting again? It's
that,
We'll do that as a separate.
each of them will have to be separate resolutions. So.
Work it, municipal process.
No wonder I'm sweating. So the first resolution will be Tamsin and Andy, and there actually are no conflicts of, well, I shouldn't say that. But I believe everyone can vote on this one.
Yeah. Yes, so Cheryl had one for,
5 Victoria.
yeah, and Christine had one for the other one, so we'll just note those. But they're not on the subcommittees. So is it,
No.
Each one,
yeah,
if they want to.
we do 3 separate motions, right? Okay.
Okay,
So, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I would note that 47 Whitcomb Way is gone. That was the Stewart House.
Okay. Do you hear that one?
yeah,
Okay. Oh, she can take it out. Okay.
We can strike that one.
The house that Calpas is related to that? Right, it had 2
Yes.
addresses, didn't it? Okay.
okay, do we want to start with the first resolution? That report HER 2024-014 regarding 2025 Friday properties update be received for information. And that subcommittee A, Tamsin and Andy review the properties as listed in the report. I'm not gonna go through and say each one number and address, but subcommittee A,
As presented.
as presented in the report.
To the mover, Lily,
I'll second that.
seconder, Christine. Support. Carried. All right.
And then the next resolution would be that report HER 2024-014 regarding 2025 priority properties be received for information, and that subcommittee B, Lily and Russell review the properties as listed in the report.
We have a mover, Andy, a seconder, Cheryl. All in support. Carried. Great.
And then the last one is that report HER just 2024-014 regarding 2025 priority properties update be received for information, and that subcommittee C, Christine and Cheryl, review the properties as listed in the report.
We have a mover. Lily and seconder, Tamsin. All in support.
And then each,
Carried.
sorry, I should say before we carry that, I also have at the end, I'll put at the end of each resolution, and that the subcommittees submit their rankings to staff to report back at the special meeting to be scheduled by staff at the end of June with the recommended list of the 2025 priority properties.
You want to do that as a separate motion?
Do I have to do that as a separate motion now that I forgot to say it in the other ones?
Let's just do it as separate.
Okay.
We'll keep
I
it.
forgot that
we'll
that was
keep
at
it
the end,
clean.
when I was.
Okay. Last one. Can we have a mover? Cheryl and Tamsin. All in support? Carried. Okay. This is by far the most procedural process we've ever had at a heritage meeting, I think. So good. Well done. What we got next here?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this next report, the Black and North family plaque. Staff have budget for a plaque to be installed at the PCC to recognize the Ord Black families for their contributions to the township. And then this report kind of looks at possible locations and messaging for the plaque, and we're looking for direction from the committee on any recommended messaging to move forward with the purchase and installation of it.
Thanks, Laura. So within the report, there was some recommended messaging. This is I guess, a legacy direction from the previous term on council to put the plaque up, and it's just it's come back to us, I believe, probably because all the work at the PCC's been for the most part completed now. So the appropriate time for these type of things is come back up. So I guess I'll open it up for any questions of staff based on the report.
Oh,
Go ahead, Laura.
Is the funding, since we're lacking funding for some of that could be considered a higher priority than a plaque, is this funding somehow linked to the funding for our properties? Could we delay it, or is it just a small drop in the bucket that needs to be done now?
Through you, Mr. Chair, staff can take that away and report back to you. And you could defer further decision on this report until we have that answer.
The walkway entrance garden is to the Millennial Garden? Is that where you're recommending it be installed?
Through Mr. Chair, I believe just like the walkway entrance to the PCC, like as you
Sorry.
walk into the PCC.
Oh,
little
in
garden.
the, like, on the stone or something?
Yeah, somewhere
Okay,
in
I'm
there.
with you. Okay.
Yeah, when I talked to other staff, that was their recommended location for the plaque.
I like that. As a committee member, can I recommend maybe at one of the new gazebo or seating locations too? Because then more people, well, the entrance is pretty important too. Just like the idea of it being outside where people will be sitting and enjoying there, but yeah, it's a good location as well.
Okay, other questions? Comments? Okay, so I think I had a couple takeaways. My understanding, Justine, was that it was budgeted in 2021, I think, off the top of my head, or maybe a year prior. It wasn't because of the renovations, the budget line item wasn't incurred. Not sure if that budget line item was carried into a next fiscal, so that's maybe a point of clarity you can seek from finance.
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, I am aware that the money is in the budget for 2024.
Okay,
So $2,000 has been budgeted in 2024, whether or not, that money can be used for, like heritage designation registrations. That I would like to see clarity from our Director of Finance regarding, and that an additional $2,000 could be requested in 2025. If the committee did not want to move forward with this project this year.
So my follow-up, do we know how much this plaque is, and we're still working on that part anyways, right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, $2,000 has been set aside for this, and that was the quote that we got for the
Oh,
plaque.
not just the quote, okay, but we don't know do we know what the quote, what the plaque looks like?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're looking to finalize what the plaque looks like, but we do know we have the monies needed to move forward with the creation and installation.
The recommended wording sounded great, and I think that, yes, go back to the family and confirm that if they have any suggestions.
So I think, yeah. My preference would be is if it's budgeted in this fiscal, like, let's get on with it. We've dragged it out for a couple of years. The PCC renovations or updates have already been taking place. I would maybe just put on my council hat here. I'd be sensitive to saying, oh, this is heritage funding. It was articulated for something very specific, and I think optically it's tricky to rob Peter and pay Paul. I think I'd like to keep it whole personally. So yeah, I think my take is that we move forward with having staff communicate with the family with the suggested wording. I thought it looked good. I was curious what the potential options for locating it would be, and maybe that's something that staff can kind of circle back with. I don't have a strong preference. I think it just where it's a place where the family feels it's relevant and prominent, would probably be the right spot. Maybe we can, just request I'm not sure if it's like the director of parks would have a preference as to where that would be, but I'm very confident that it'll be put in the right spot,
Yeah.
not in, not in the far back corner, like where it's not noticeable. That makes sense for everybody?
Yes.
Great, Laura.
So that report HER-2024-015 entitled Black and Nord Family Pack be received for information, and that staff proceed with contacting the Black and Nord family to advise of the purchase and installation of the plaque at the Coast Community Center grounds with the messaging as outlined in the report, and that's the following correspondence with the Black and Nord family. I repeated myself. That's just the end of it, that we proceed as outlined in the report.
Can we have a mover? Tim, seconder?
I'll second that.
Great, all in support? Great, carried. All right. Good, that's been a long time coming. So I think these are somewhat tedious to do, but I think are really important for community. Okay. All right, Laura, item 8.4, report 2024-016 with some meeting dates for next year.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is a pretty straightforward report, and it kind of lays out the proposed meeting schedule for 2025, following the same format we saw this current year.
Any comments or questions from the group at all? In terms of the date, I guess two things, the dates, and then typically we try to have the meetings at 1 PM on the Monday of the calendar. Questions, comments?
The two that are moved is to Tuesday because of holiday, is that correct?
I believe the September one was just kicked back to the next.
Both of them are
week.
moved additional weeks, not like to the Tuesday, but just to the next Monday during, like after the new year and then for Labor Day holiday.
Ready for a motion?
That report HER-2024-016, the proposed 2024 Heritage Advisory Committee schedule will be received for information, and that the 2025 schedule be approved as presented.
All right, Lily, on support. All right, carried. Next one, agenda item 8.7, Heritage Report 024-017, the permit bylaw. Laura, I believe you have a deck to share with us here.
Yes.
Is there a time check?
2:24.
I'm just wondering how long.
It's okay for me.
To go through.
It was a very detailed report, so I would say probably just hit the high points or the significant deviations from the bylaw from where it was to where we're going.
So actually, I'm gonna take this one.
Oh, okay.
This is
Um,
Justine's baby.
Yeah, so I can try and run through it a little more quickly. So through Mr. Chair, the purpose of this presentation is to provide the Heritage Advisory Committee with an overview of the proposed permit bylaw, as well as comments received from council at their March 20th council meeting for the committee's consideration and feedback. So the purpose of this bylaw is to provide a heritage permit process, as when a property is designated under section 29, they do need to receive permission from the council in order to alter and demolish attributes on that property. So the purpose of this bylaw is to provide kind of a clear process for them to go through. You can go to the next slide. This is just the enabling legislation. So the act allows council to delegate its authority to a municipal employee or official to consent to alterations under the act, so long as it consults with its Heritage Advisory Committee if once established. As we have one established, that's what we're doing today. With the proposed delegated authority, staff are seeking delegated authority from council for the municipal clerk or their designate. The first area of authority is to consent to alteration of properties designated under part 4 of the act through granting a heritage permit exemption. The second is the authority to extend timelines for approved permits if the applicant's not able to complete the work within the required timeline. And the third is the authority to permit alterations required for an emergency repair or to address a health and safety or security issue without the submission of an application. And staff would report to the next council and committee meeting with information on that if that were to take place. Next, yep. So on this slide, you'll see circumstances that staff are seeking delegated authority for in order to issue a heritage permit waiver. A couple of examples include construction of a detached accessory structure, which would not impact the heritage attributes on the property, additional removal, replacement of alteration to exterior lighting, etc. Staff are proposing the following exemptions for the heritage permit bylaw as listed on the slide. Maybe one thing to note on this slide would be the definition of maintenance within the bylaw. So maintenance means routine, clinical, non-destructive actions necessary to slow the deterioration of a designated property, which could include gardening and repair of landscape features, repainting where there's little or no change in color, caulking, weatherproofing to view. There are 3 types of permits proposed within the bylaw. The first being the heritage permit waiver. This is for a clear and streamlined process for approvals for alterations and construction of buildings and structures on designated properties that will not impact heritage attributes. Then there will be the heritage permit process where it would be an impact on a heritage attribute, and then the demolition and removal permit for if they were looking to demolish or remove an impacted attribute. On this slide is an outline of the heritage permit waiver process that was proposed in the first draft of the bylaw. This just outlines that the process is fully with the clerk until the clerk potentially refuses an application. If they were to refuse an application, it would be referred to the Heritage Advisory Committee for comments and the council for a decision. Otherwise, if it's approved, it just stays with the clerk. For the heritage permit and demolition or removal permit process. So again, this is what was proposed in the first draft of the bylaw. They follow essentially the same process. In this process version, council has the authority to deem applications complete and also require additional information. And then it would be brought to the Heritage Advisory Committee for comments before council made a decision. This slide, so the act contains legislative timelines for decision once an application to alter or demolish is deemed complete. In both cases, council has 90 days from when the application is deemed complete to make a decision, unless council and the property owners have agreed on a longer period. Next slide. This slide is just the offenses and restoration costs. So the proposed bylaw references section 69 with respect to penalties for offenses and restoration costs. So we've just provided that information on this slide for the committee's information. Now we're getting into some of the feedback. So council provided feedback with respect to clarity for the municipal clerk to refer a refused heritage permit waiver application, and staff have recommended the wording be amended as presented in this presentation to address this clarity concern, so it was whether or not it was automatically referred, so staff have just clarified it to say that it shall be referred to the Heritage Advisory Committee for comment and council for decision within 30 days of the application being deemed complete. Okay, and then this next slide, so council provide feedback as to why staff are recommending that a heritage permit waiver be included rather than just listing all of those items under the exemption section of the bylaw. So staff recommend that the heritage permit waiver process remain as inadvertent alterations to heritage attributes through construction would largely be captured through the building permit process. There are circumstances where a property owner could alter heritage attributes in other ways, such as adding stairs to a porch or the painting of masonry that was not previously painted. While many municipalities require a heritage permit for all alterations, under that section of the Act, staff are proposing that these circumstances be addressed through an exemption waiver on a designated property, and township staff are through this, township staff are seeking to strike a balance of protecting the designated properties and the freedom of property owners to alter their property in a timely manner. So with this next section, council provided feedback recommending that section 4(2)(b)(11) be amended to replace council with the Heritage Advisory Committee. So staff have created a process matrix which outlines how the process changes if these were made. Laura, can you bring that up for me? Okay, perfect. So in this first version, the municipal clerk is provide delegated authority to deem applications complete, and the Heritage Advisory Committee is given authority to request additional information rather than council for the alteration heritage permit process. So what the changes that happen with this process compared to what we looked at previously is that the permit application be submitted to the clerk. A special meeting may be required for the Heritage Advisory Committee to deem if there is any additional information that's required. If there was additional information required, that would have to be submitted. And then once that was submitted, the clerk would deem the application complete or incomplete and serve notice. If nothing was required, then the clerk would just deem the application complete or complete. Then a second special meeting would be required of the Heritage Advisory Committee to provide comments on the application. It would then go to council, and then that follows the same process that we saw earlier. If we go to the second version, in this case, council is going to maintain their authority to deem an application complete, and the Heritage Advisory Committee will be given the authority to request additional information. In this case, the application would be submitted to the clerk. It would then come to the Heritage Advisory Committee to determine if additional information was needed. If there was additional information needed that would need to be submitted, it would then be brought to council to deem complete. The clerk would then serve notice of the complete application. It would then come back to the Heritage Advisory Committee where a special meeting may be required for comment prior to going back to council for a decision. So that's kind of what the second, and then just follows the regular process. In the third version, we have delegated authority given to the clerk to deem applications complete, and the clerk is given the sole ability to request additional information. In this case, the permit would be submitted to the clerk. The clerk would determine if information was required. Once satisfied, the clerk would then deem the application complete. It would then come to the Heritage Advisory Committee for comment to provide to council. A special meeting may be required, and then it would follow that process where council made a decision, and then it would go from there. So based on council's request to replace council with Heritage Advisory Committee, depending on what delegated authority is provided, it would change the impacts. Oh, can you go back one slide forward? The other section that council made a similar suggestion was section 4.3(b)(11). However, council cannot delegate its authority with respect to applications for demolition. Therefore, staff recommend that this wording remain the same in the bylaw. You can go to the next slide. So council provided feedback on section 4.2(c)(2) and 4.3(c)(3). So staff or council provided feedback regarding the municipal clerk being responsible for deeming applications complete under the Act for alteration permits. So staff advised that council is able to delegate this authority to the municipal clerk to deem the application complete. If council delegates its authority to staff to deem the application complete, then it is required to make a decision within 90 days unless otherwise agreed upon by the applicant. Council would need to be satisfied with the documentation required by staff, as there would be limited opportunity for council to request additional information. So that's with respect to alterations. With respect to demolitions, as with the previous slide, staff recommend that the wording remain the same, as council cannot delegate its authority to grant applications to demolish. You can go to the next slide. So council provided feedback with respect to section 42C3 and 43C3. And staff have made a recommendation that the wording be updated as presented in the presentation to provide clarity at what point the application is provided to the Heritage Advisory Committee. So this slide just outlines the engagement that has taken place to date. So the first draft of the bylaw brought to council on March 20th. We then launched a survey on April 4th through Engage Plus Lunch. Information was mailed to the 2024 open house invitations. It was shared at the open house. It was on a banner on the township website, and it was also shared through social media. The second draft of the bylaw is to be presented at the May 22nd, 2024 council meeting with recommendations for adoption, although a third draft may be required. So timelines, next steps, this just really goes over what I said before. And again, we're at the point that we're at today is receiving feedback from the committee and then looking to bring a next draft to council. I'm happy to answer any questions.
You have questions for Justine? Lily?
I was just wondering, I'm not sure I noticed in there, is there a spot where we can be informed of what's going on? If the clerk has the duty and the responsibility and delegation to see it up to a point, but can we be notified as a committee just that it's going on?
So the committee will receive the application, so a special meeting may be called, and then the committee will receive an application. And then you'll have an opportunity to look at it and make comments.
That is for the ones that you deemed acceptable, I mean, the other ones as well.
So staff, I believe it's included in the bylaw that staff will provide a report at the end of the year with respect to any that went through the other process. With that being said, the committee is seeking to have or wants to make a recommendation that staff not have the authority to issue those or would like to see something different, that can certainly be added.
I would just like to be notified, this is personally, that this has taken place, that the application is going through, this, there have been other for information type communications to the group. And I think the end of the year might be a little late because if we do have any comments, we can't.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, are you seeking to have input on those applications, or if the decision is made, you're just looking to be told that the decision has been made?
I think the decision is fine. I think just for information that we know what's going on these properties that we kind of responsible for at some point.
So maybe just as, like, I'm thinking it's similar to Andrew's building permit report that we see at every council meeting. It's just a running annual total, and maybe that's like, and my take is like, if there's no feedback required of the Heritage Committee, that's fine. That's the process, and I'm supportive of it because those are slam dunk ones type of thing in my mind. But maybe we could just request a process that within the meeting, notes,
Quarterly reports.
quarterly report, or just a report since the last council meeting. Here are the number of heritage decisions that have been made that have been referenced to committee or were made by staff based on the criteria. Is that a fair request? Okay, I think that's a good bill.
I'm not sure if staff will have put it in the bylaw directly or will just be.
Part of the work plan. Okay.
So the committee's requesting that staff let them know, like,
Provide quarterly reports.
I just, even if it's just similar to the building permit report, like it's there for knowledge. Like there's very little questions on it. They're permits. Okay. I think anything else from everybody? Questions? I think one thing that I take out of this, so good job in terms of the decision chart that was presented at the open house, and I thought that was quite well received, Justine. So well done on that one. I think the other pieces, this will require a bit more work of the Heritage Committee over the course of time as issues come up. So be forewarned, what you are going to be supporting will require a bit more work in your behalf in the future, which isn't a bad thing. I think this is a good thing.
that report HER 2024-017 Heritage Permit Bylaw be received for information, and that the following comments be forwarded to council for their consideration. That the committee requests that staff provide quarterly reports on the heritage permit status. Heritage permit
Heritage permit issued.
issued. Okay, got it, thanks.
We have a mover. Christine, seconder Andy, all in support? Carried. Okay, given the time today, I'd like to recommend that item 8.8, the plaque designation options be pushed to our to be determined meeting in the future. I believe that's 2025 budget requirement, so unless I get told don't do that, I think we can push that one to the next
Yeah, do you
meeting.
want to control the motion?
So that memo 2024-002 new plaque design details be pushed to a future Heritage Advisory Committee meeting. Be deferred. I was thinking of throughout the board.
Mover. Andy, seconder. Samson, all right, all in support. Carried, all right, wrap things up. I do not believe we have any further correspondence, Laura.
You were correct.
Do we have any announcements from anybody? No, no notice of motion, I believe. Nope. Any new business to report? None. All right, can I have a motion to
That
adjourn?
the Heritage Advisory Committee hereby adjourns at 2:41 PM.
Andy? And Tim. All right, thanks, guys. Sorry, that was a bit rushed, but good discussion.
I got my running shoes on.
I'm gonna be